So the proposal of the Ministry of Environment and Forests to enact the Environment Impact Assessment Notification 2020 was initiated a day before the Prime Minister imposed a nationwide lockdown as an attempt to tackle COVID pandemic. Of course, the lockdown was without a plan, and it terribly failed as it was meant to. But the important element of the promotion of a major enactment a day before the lockdown is imposed speaks volumes about the anti-democratic nature of this draft notification. As a ritual, Mr. Prakash Javadekar of the Ministry of Environment, India's Environment Minister, asked people to comment on it. And I'm saying it's a ritual because nobody had the time, patience, or even the inclination to comment on an amendment of the EIA notification when their very lives were at stake. Across the country, the pandemic had caused fear, and in addition to it, the lockdown had disrupted communication, transport, jobs, livelihoods. I mean, you name it, everything was in disruption. And so, if you ask me to comment on a very, very serious piece of law, I would just be staring back at you, because I'll be bewildered that you even have the capacity or the imagination to think people will be worrying about this notification over their own lives and livelihoods. So that's how serious the problem is with the draft EIA notification. Now, what it really intends to achieve, any EIA law achieve, is to assess the implications of any development on environment and human rights. That's why we have this instrument called the Environment Impact Assessment. It's been there for 20-25 years. In other countries, it's been there for almost 50 years. But the idea of it is to ensure that we anticipate damage that we will do because of our anthropocentrism and try and avoid it. In fact, we can even say no to it. Like, for instance, in Brazil, people have said no to cutting roads through forests because you cannot have a forest when it is fragmented. It destroys the forest. And the same way people have said no to dams in India, to roads going through forests, to mining inside forests, to expanding ports in coastal areas which are highly sensitive, to building cities into the sea, as in Bombay. People say no for credible reasons. There's wisdom in it. That wisdom is captured in the Environment Impact Assessment. And then you assess it for every project in relationship with the existing laws, existing norms, existing land use plans, and then take a conscious decision to go ahead with the development if truly its impact is going to be more positive than negative. So it's a thing called cost-benefit analysis, and there are also risks that are assessed. For instance, the risk of how do you attend to a tsunami if it happens, right? So we build into the sea so much that even when the tsunami or an high tide comes, you have no defenses, because that would be stupid. So this EIA is a tool to address stupidity which is embedded in so many developmental proposals, because they're all rushing to make money. So this is an effort to actually slow you down and say, while you want to make money, let it not be at the cost of this planet. Let it not be at the cost of millions of people who will come to live here, because many of these decisions are irreversible. So that's how critical a EIA notice is. In that sense, it's a law which is so central to navigating development in a country. So the difference between earlier and the current form is that earlier EIA notifications, like there is a one from 2006, has been amended about 40 times. Every time it was amended, it was weakened. Before the 2006 version, there was a 1994 version, which was amended about 30 times. Again, that was amended to weaken. Every time it was. Very rarely was it strengthened. The only strengthening that took place was in 1997 to amend the 94 notification and ensure public hearings became mandatory for all projects. But when it came to 2006 notification, public hearings were made were allowed to be at the discretion of the district authorities. So you can see that dilutions have been very systemic to this notification process. So the question is, what do you do with 2020? Now 2020 is all the dilutions from 1994 to 2020 put together in this new version of the law in which you really don't need the law anymore because you can just go ahead and do whatever you want, is effectively the message. You can destroy forests, you can open up coal mines in forests, you can expand ports, you can cut through forests with railway lines or road networks, you can widen existing roads, you can expand cities, you can expand industries. Basically, you can do almost anything because the existing regulatory systems which slowed down those decisions are now sought to be lifted with the 2020 version. So it is that bad a law. And therefore, I think Prakash Javadekar was worried that if this law comes in when everybody is functional, everybody is cognizant, everybody is capable of democratically engaging, it would never pass through. It is almost like giving industries a self-certification authority and making regulatory agencies very peripheral. So it's that bad. And the hush-hush is really because they did not even want democratic debate. And I wouldn't just lay the blame on Narendra Modi administration. I would also say Manmohan Singh was no better when it came to EIA law. We have argued that this is a subordinate law, which means it is not passed through the parliament. It is passed by the executive wing of the ministry and it is only placed before the parliament for information. So it is not a law which has been crafted by people through their elected representatives, particularly the parliament, because it's a national law. And that's why it is a notification. So it can be amended at the will of the minister, and which is exactly what Prakash Javadekar did against the opinion of his own officers who wanted it to be extended, who wanted commenting to be really democratic. He just wished them all away. And now the records are tumbling out from the almiras of ministry in showing how undemocratic the Modi administration is. In fact, they are violating the most fundamental precept of lawmaking that even MPs should not know. You probably are aware of how Mr. Jairam Ramesh, who is a Rajya Sabha MP and now also the chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Environment and Forests, has been engaging with Prakash Javadekar basically to say, look, we are members of parliament and we would like to have a look at the law. And Javadekar keeps responding as if, okay, if you want to look at it, whatever you want to say, you say, but we can take our decisions without being compelled by your views. That's basically his language. So, who benefits from this type of law? It's the corporate sector. India is not making its laws anymore based on homegrown democratic processes. Most of these corporate consultants are foreign consultants. They don't care two roots about India. They are here to maximize their wealth, and the weaker our environmental laws, more quickly they can grab and loot. And they can run. If India sinks, they will go to Africa. If Africa sinks, they'll go to South America. They are moving their money around the planet. And they really don't care for our natural capital. They don't care for our lives. They don't care for our livelihoods. You can see how the LG Polymers case has gone. Repeatedly, the ministry was told that factory is a very disastrous factory for years. But because they wanted to favor Korean companies, they pushed the factory into expanding, and then that explosion took place. In the last 3-4 months of the lockdown, at least 10 industries have exploded because of weakening of environmental regulatory controls. Now that is how serious this matter is. People will die, and we are just not going back to Bhopal in 19. We are setting ourselves to massive cataclysmic Bhopals with this type of weakening of law. And when it comes to evergreen, greenfield projects, the proposed EIA notification 2020 actually allows for any form of development all along the line of control up to 100 kilometers. Which means, for instance, there was a webinar a few days ago where Justice Deepak Gupta, who recently retired from the Supreme Court, said he comes from the state of Sikkim. Almost all of Sikkim, their fundamental rights to be participant in environmental decision making is gone because they are within 100 kilometers of the line of control. And that would be the case across Bihar, in the northeast, in the sensitive areas of Kashmir, Rajasthan, Gujarat. So what it does is it basically tells people across that 7,000-8,000 kilometers that you don't really matter. What we tell you, you accept. It can have disastrous consequences like in the Kedarnath floods. Tens of dams were built along the Bhagirathi, and one heavy rainfall and there was a cloud burst. and everything went tumbling down and killed thousands and thousands of people. And we are a country who are very, very capable of forgetting the last time we killed 10,000 people in an industrial disaster, or the other time we killed some 500 people in a dam collapse, or somebody who just got washed away because we didn't plan our coastal areas properly and the tide went and hit some large buildings or ports and fishing villages just disappeared. So we are that kind of people. We are the most insensitive when it comes to attending to human rights and environment in the world today. I mean, just look at India's record. In the Environment Pollution Index, we are one of the worst. I mean, we have slipped down 35 places in the last 3 years and reached the very bottom of the Environmental Pollution Index. In the Human Development Index, we have slipped. So what it really says is this development is not going and helping Indians improve. It is maximizing the wealth of people like Adani, Ambani, Jeff Bezos, Google, Facebook, because they are all benefiting from these transactions. When environment and natural resources get transacted and financialized, people who invest in this are not necessarily only the old-time industrial classes. Through a variety of venture capitalists, through a variety of financial intermediaries, the big four, big five, big 10 will park their money because their money multiplies. So they really don't care. And for instance, look at the computer companies. They can destroy the world's forests because they want the rare earths. And it is how they get in, by weakening laws, by ensuring people cannot understand what's going on. So the Environment Impact Assessment Notification of 2020 is deliberately confounding, deliberately confusing, deliberately disruptive of democracy, because Mr. Prakash Javadekar doesn't believe in it, Mr. Narendra Modi doesn't believe in it, the entire Union Cabinet doesn't believe in it. Because if they actually did, they would have never introduced it one day before the lockdown was introduced, because none of us could engage. None of us could leave. Most of us didn't have access to internet. So how can you actually communicate? Communication is a two-way process. Communication is not a one-time thing. It is a repeated iteration of different types of concerns. Communication requires us to associate, come together, sit with each other, discuss, debate, understand, translate, and believe it or not, this is not even in your language. Courts have to tell them, put it in a language people can understand. Most of us don't speak English or Hindi. Just because I am articulate doesn't mean 10 others are, right? So I think there is this deliberate effort to derail democracy to advantage the top 1% of India. They are now owning the politicians, and the politicians are giving it back to them for the investment they have made in their elections, in their success, in their administration, and this is how you do it. And you can see more laws which will be weakened. Forest laws will be weakened, Wildlife Act will be weakened. It's already being done. Prakash Javadekar, sitting on the National Board of Wildlife, clears projects left, right and center. So we have never had an environment ministry as disastrous as this one is under Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar. Thank you.